Hey, what's up? Today, I'm gonna show you guys how to make grown-up chicken nuggets. In this video, I'm gonna show you how to prep the breast meat to avoid dryness, how to bread a chicken nugget for maximum crispiness, then I'm gonna show you 2 ways to cook these nuggets, one of which is using a method that I've historically been very negative on. Along the way, I'm gonna show you guys 3 delicious dipping sauces that you can make from scratch in about 5 minutes. To get started, I'll grab 2 large chicken breasts. In the US, that means about 2 pounds of meat, which is insanely large, but that's what's available. To prep this breast, I'll grab my meat tenderizing tool and punch it about 10 to 12 times. This is going to physically break down some of the proteins in the meat, making it much more easy to chew, and it's gonna perforate the meat, making little channels for our buttermilk brine to slip into in just a second. By the way, the tenderizing tool that I'm using here is called a Jacquard, and in my opinion, it's a valuable single-use tool that I think most home cooks could benefit from having. Link to this one in the description. I would say grab a fork if you don't have or aren't gonna buy a Jacquard, then poke the breast 20 to 25 times instead of 10 to 12. The forked meat is gonna be a little bit more beat up, but it's gonna approximate what the Jacquard does, and it'll work pretty good. Next, I'll grab a knife and cut this breast into strips that are 1 inch wide. For this monster 1 pound breast, that means about 5 pieces. Next, I'll cut those strips down into roughly 1 inch cubes. In total, 2 pounds of breast meat should yield me about 25 pieces. Next, to season these things up, I'm gonna make a buttermilk brine. For that, I'll combine 400 grams of buttermilk, or 300 grams milk and 100 grams of sour cream if you can't find buttermilk, then 2 grams each of onion and garlic powder, 2 grams paprika, and then 20 grams of salt. There we go. Next, I'll just whisk that to combine until the salt is dissolved into the buttermilk. Now, all of my cubed breast meat goes into the brine, then I'll just fold everything together until the meat is submerged. The 5% salt in this brine is gonna enable this breast meat to hold on to pretty much all of its moisture during cooking, which means a very juicy nugget. Now, just move this brined chicken breast over to the fridge and let it sit for 25 minutes. Next, I need to make the main event, which is the nugget breading. For that, into a bowl, I'll add 300 grams all-purpose flour, 5 grams salt, 3 grams black pepper, 3 grams paprika, and 5 grams of garlic powder. Then I'll come back and just whisk that to combine to get everything spread evenly. Then I'll grab 75 to 100 grams of buttermilk and drizzle that into the flour mix kinda slowly. Then I'm gonna whisk that buttermilk into the flour until I get some partially hydrated clumps, and then I'll just come back and toss everything together with my hands and then crumble those clumps down into tiny little crags. This step right here is the secret to making super crispy breaded chicken. The little bits of partially hydrated flour provide about 90% of the crunchiness. The final product should look almost like crunched up cornflakes. Now, to bread up my brined breast, I'm gonna drizzle in some of the brine that's been sitting on the outside to crag things up even more. Then I'll drop the meat into the breading mix. From here, I'll just lightly toss the nuggets to get as much breading stuck to them as possible. Also, inevitably there's gonna be nuggets with no coverage in certain places. That's not a big deal at all. Just dunk the exposed part back into the buttermilk brine, then dunk it into some fresh breading to glue it back on. Now, this little piece of breast meat is totally encrusted with tons of little nuggets of hydrated seasoned flour. Next, I'm gonna toss the other half of my chicken breast with the breading, then I'll carefully lay out all 25 pieces of my chicken onto a plate or a little baby sheet tray. By the way, if you were doing these make ahead, now would be the time to freeze them. Then later on, when you want nuggets, fry them right from the freezer. My next step is gonna be moving this tray over to the fridge so that the breading can hydrate for about 20 minutes. This step is very important. The breading will just slide right off if you cook these right after breading. Now, I'm gonna let these sit for a second, then I'm gonna show you 3 very quick dipping sauces that you can make from scratch. But first, I wanna thank Armra for sponsoring this video. Well before Armra Colostrum sponsored this channel, Lauren and I actually bought it for ourselves based on an ad very similar to this one. That ad claimed that this colostrum increases energy, reduces bloating, and enables faster recovery. That's all good, but the real reason that we actually bought it was because both of us, as mid to late 30-something biohackery types, really want to work on our gut health. Armra Colostrum is a dairy bioactive whole food produced by all mammals in the first 48 to 72 hours after giving birth, and research shows that it works by strengthening our mucosal barriers, which is shown to improve gut health, which in turn supports overall health. One of the main things that sets Armra's colostrum apart is its cold chain bioactive pasteurization. CPP helps keep all of Armra's over 400 plus bioactive nutrients active and functional throughout use. Since starting our Armra Colostrum regimen of 3 to 4 scoops per day, Lauren, who classically suffers from a ton of gut issues, has noticed that she's been able to eat some of the foods that she used to avoid, like spicy stuff, and me, less gassy. To give Armor Colostrum a try, head to tryarmor.com/BrianL for 15% off your first order. That's tryarmra.com/BrianL for 15% off. The first sauce we're gonna make is honey mustard. To make it, I'll combine 100 grams of Dijon mustard, 75 grams of honey, or like a 4-second squeezer, then 100 grams of mayonnaise and 2 grams of salt. Next, I'll just stir that to combine until there aren't any more lumps of mayonnaise in the sauce. Bonus points for using an immersion blender here because that actually makes this sauce quite a bit creamier. And that is the easiest, best tasting sauce there is. If you wanted to bump this up a little bit more, I'd say add in some prepared horseradish, but the mustard itself has plenty of heat and it kind of clears your nostrils. Next up is Uncle B-Man's signature onion barbecue dipping sauce. I'm gonna start there with half a red onion, or about 75 to 100 grams worth, and then I'll grate it on the largest holes of my box grater. Grating the onion breaks it down much more than just dicing it with a knife, and that allows it to melt into the sauce so that it doesn't stand out texturally on our nugget. Once it's pulped up on the grater, I'm gonna break it down even more by running my knife through it a few times. Next, I'll grab 5 garlic cloves, then mush those through my garlic press. Then once my aromatics are all prepared, I'm gonna drizzle a long hit of neutral oil into a small saucepan. Then I'll grab my cutting board and slide my onion and garlic in and let them sizzle together for about 5 minutes, or until they're softened and most of their moisture has been cooked off, like this. Next, I'll add in the one true mother sauce, ketchup, 250 grams worth to be specific, then 30 grams of Forge, 20 grams of hot sauce, 20 grams of cider vinegar, 20 grams of yellow mustard, 1 grams of chili flakes if you want this thing a little bit spicier, then 5 grams of chili powder, and a long, slow drizzle of molasses, or about 100 grams worth. Sub in brown sugar if you don't have molasses. Now bring this sauce up to a simmer, then turn the heat down to low and cook for about 10 minutes to reduce everything by about 25% and meld all the flavors together. This is my go-to barbecue sauce for basically all things, but it's particularly good for chicken nuggets. It's sweet, sour, a little bit spicy, and has a strong aromatic backbone from all those melted onions. Lastly, I want to show you guys a quick and dirty ranch dressing that comes together super fast. To make it, I'll combine 125 grams of mayonnaise, 50 grams of sour cream, and 50 grams of buttermilk. Then a strong pinch each of onion powder, dried dill, dried thyme, dried chives, and 2 grams of salt. By the way, if you don't have and aren't going to buy all of these dried herbs, just buy a packet of Hidden Valley ranch seasoning. It tastes good. Don't feel any shame about that. Next, I'll just smush in 1 garlic clove with my press, then I'll stir everything to combine. And that is classic, fast, easy to make ranch dressing that is super creamy and twangy. Now I'm gonna show you guys 2 ways to cook these nuggets. For the first method, I'm gonna grab a 3 to 4 quart saucepan and drop it on the stove. Then I'll glug in about 2 cups or 400 to 500 grams of neutral oil. I'm gonna be shallow frying these nuggets because deep frying isn't necessary here. Temp wise, I'm looking for 350F, and once I'm there, I'm gonna carefully load in half of my nuggets, or about 10 to 12 pieces. Then I'm gonna come back with a spoon and carefully nudge these to make sure that they aren't stuck to each other or the bottom of the pot. It's in this first 10 to 15 seconds that the breading is particularly fragile, so agitate these just enough to loosen things up, but don't be too aggressive because you can pretty easily scrape off the breading. Now I'm gonna let these babies fry for about 6 to 8 minutes, or until they are nice and crispy on the outside. Cooking method 2 is an air fryer. I know, I've gone on record as not liking these in the past. Air fryers are kind of dumb. But if you want to make breaded food crispy at home with less calories, this is a pretty good tool. To use it, I'm gonna drop half of my nuggets into the basket, then I'll spray them liberally with pan spray to help get some heat from the air to the breading. Then I'm gonna slide the drawer in and air fry these at 375 for 20 to 22 minutes. 20 minutes later, these nuggets aren't looking too bad. Browning just looks kind of weird though. It's splotchy and uneven. Let's taste it. It's definitely got a little bit of a crispy crunch on the outside, but the meat inside is drier than I'd like. It actually makes perfect sense because to make something crispy with an air fryer, you're essentially dehydrating it. So over the course of the 25 minutes that it was in the machine, we cooked a lot of moisture out of it. Overall, it's fine, and it's way less calories than the deep fried version. So if that's your thing, I would say go for it, but it's like a 7 out of 10. Back at the stove, my shallow fried nuggets have been sizzling for about 7 minutes, so it's time to take a look. As you can see, these look golden brown and feel nice and firm on the outside. I'll mention that these nuggets are going to cook through well before the exterior is crispy, so we're mainly deciding if these are done based on their color. And that is just a good looking piece of fried chicken. Now, let me taste this thing. I'm happy with this result. You get some tender, moist, whole muscle chicken in the middle that's seasoned perfectly, and then you get very crispy, well-seasoned exterior. And you get plenty of it, and it's well stuck on. For me, this is a 10 of 10 chicken nugget. Let me know down in the comments what kind of dipping sauce you guys dunk your nuggets into. And if you want another video where I show you a grown-up version of your childhood favorites, check out this video for grown-up PB&J. I'll see you there. Now, let's eat this thing.